Seventh-day Adventism. Is this a cult or a true Christian church? I'm going to answer that in a moment.
Well, another one popped up. Another prominent YouTuber releasing a video with the question, is the SDA church a cult? It seems like there's a new one every day. There's a reason this is happening, and soon enough, this will get even more and more frequent and more intense, and you'll find out why in this video. Today, I want to ask you a question. It's going to be a little weird, but the question will make perfect sense to you in just a moment. Have you ever slapped your forehead? I mean, really slapped it. You know, like this. Anytime someone slaps their forehead like that, it's because they realize something that's been staring them in the face all along, and they realize that they should have seen that thing a long time ago. That's what happened to me recently. I realized that here I was all along doing a series on rebooting Adventism for over a year and a half, and it never dawned on me that literally everything that people are saying makes the Seventh-day Adventist Church a cult is referenced either directly or indirectly in Revelation chapter 12 through 14, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Maybe you already saw this, but I didn't. I mean, I knew the pieces to the puzzle. I knew these things were what caused the writers of Kingdom of the Cults to say that Adventists are puzzling, but not a cult. And it's because, as you're about to see, the puzzling items are all there in three pivotal chapters of Revelation, chapters 12, 13, and 14. If you didn't know, the book of Revelation is written with a structure that looks like this. It's a chiasm, or a chiastic structure. Here, you can see a breakdown of how the message of the book of Revelation evolves throughout the chapters, and smack dab in the middle is Revelation 12 through 14, where we see the war in heaven, the beast powers, and the persecution of God's people, and the three angels' messages. Now, I've understood this structure for over 15 years, but as I said, what I didn't realize is that every single one of these videos that's been popping up lately, questioning if the Adventist Church is a cult, has to do with something or many things that is taught in these three chapters. But take a look for yourself.
Seventh-day Adventism.
Trying to tell people Jesus gonna come next week, I'm gonna ask you to leave.
One of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is prophecy.
You look at the prophecies of Ellen G. White.
Ellen White. The heavenly sanctuary, the investigative judgment, the remnant church,
They believe that since we worship on Sunday, that that's the mark of the beast.
the Sabbath, obedience to God's commandments.
Seventh-day Adventist, law-abiding nonsense. I ain't messing with it.
There you have it. And if that was a little too fast for you, let me show you the list. The Sabbath, the sanctuary, which includes the investigative judgment, the second coming, the spirit of prophecy, the state of the dead, the three angels' messages, which includes the mark of the beast and righteousness by faith, the great controversy. What you see there are many of the pillars of the Adventist faith. This list is very important. And why do I say that? This statement from, dare I say, the spirit of prophecy will answer that question. Our people have been regarded as too insignificant to be worthy of notice, but a change will come. The Christian world is now making movements which will necessarily bring commandment-keeping people into prominence. Every position of our faith will be searched into, and if we are not thorough Bible students, established, strengthened, and settled, the wisdom of the world's great men will lead us astray. This is why we're being questioned so much. This is why since the 1950s, around the time that the book Questions on Doctrines was released, that other Christian denominations were asking Adventists the same question over and over again. Why do you differ? Why do you differ? Why do you differ on these doctrines? People are asking questions. People are making comments. There's a reason why so many channels are popping up that are completely dedicated to tearing apart every point of doctrine Adventists differ on from mainstream Protestantism. And there can only be two options for the reason that this is happening. And these are the two options. Number one is a very short one, which is that every single Seventh-day Adventist that understands this message is either crazy or truly deceived.
I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. We believe all the same things that you believe, but we go to church on Saturdays. What?
Or, option number two is that the attention and sometimes vitriol that is directed at the SDA Church is a direct expression of what is highlighted in Revelation chapter 12, which is that there really is a great controversy between Christ and Satan. And perhaps Michael really was Christ's pre-incarnate form before he became a man and dwelt among us. Because, after all, if he can become a man, why wouldn't he be able to manifest himself as an angel? Perhaps Satan really has come down to earth with great anger because Satan knows that he has a short time, and so he's accusing the brethren before God. Perhaps this wrath is being directed at the woman representing the church that keeps the commandments of God and has the testimony of Jesus, which Revelation 19:10 defines as the spirit of prophecy. So perhaps Ellen White really is a prophet, and that's why so many people are obsessed with proving otherwise, the same way that they tried to discredit the prophets of old. Perhaps the Sabbath is still valid, which is why Satan is angry at those that keep the commandments of God. Perhaps the mark of the beast really is the false Sabbath, and maybe even though no one has the mark now, perhaps many will receive it when Christian zealots in this country have their way in trying to legislate this day.
Those of us who look to the broad Christian tradition should seize the term for ourselves. We are indeed Christian nationalists. Civil authority can regulate the Sabbath day, for example, to remove those daily cares and concerns that distract us from Sunday worship.
Perhaps the book of Hebrews is really letting us know that we need to take a look at the earthly sanctuary in Leviticus to understand better the plan of salvation. And perhaps there really is an investigative judgment taking place in the heavenly sanctuary, and that the hour of God's judgment really has come. Option number 2 is that perhaps Jesus really is coming soon, and many are afraid because they're not ready to meet the judgment. Perhaps the third angel's message really is righteousness by faith in verity, which is highlighted at the end of this message by saying, "Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." Perhaps those that say the Seventh-day Adventist Church is teaching a different gospel, perhaps they're the ones that are teaching a different gospel, one that does not require complete victory through submission to Christ, so that he can work in us, both to have the will and the power to do his good pleasure. And finally, option number 2 is that perhaps because Satan knows that all of this is true, he's accusing the SDA Church of being a cult, to discredit the church's message, to try to prevent people from taking the time to investigate these truths for themselves. Because after all, who would want to join a cult? People want to know why we differ, and the time has come for us to answer those questions, not to win an argument, not just so people can accept a bunch of doctrines, but because every single one of those doctrines points to something that reveals the character of God. The Sabbath reveals that God longs to tabernacle with us. The sanctuary reveals that we have a God that intercedes for us every single day. The second coming reveals a God that is longing to take us home. The spirit of prophecy reveals a God that did not just communicate with his people thousands of years ago, but also in our time. The state of the dead reveals a God that is too loving to burn people forever and ever. The great controversy reveals a God that is fighting a battle over the misrepresentation of his character by the enemy. And the three angels' messages shows a God that is trying to reveal his character, also known as his glory, to a dying world in an attempt to get them to accept by faith his righteousness, so that we no longer have to be slaves to sin, living in rebellion against the expression of the character of God, also known as the 10 Commandments. Some believe in option number 1, that all of this is a concocted story that's deceiving millions of people around the world, and they feel it their duty to warn people against this cult. And because God is a God of freedom, they're free to do so. But as for me, this revelation of truth makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I want to share this truth with as many people as possible. So if you agree, then I want to invite you to take a look at the description below to find a link for a discussion that we will be having or have already had, depending on when you see this video, with someone that has questions about the SDA Church. This conversation will be taking place live on Sunday, September 22nd at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. So please, take the time to join us and let others know as well. Now is the time for us to know what we believe and share what we believe. And I hope that you will join me in doing just that. God bless.